Yeah, I think most importantly, it's been a fairly natural week. No midweek game for the first time in quite a considerable amount of time. It's given the guys not just an opportunity to, get their minds back onto to the game this weekend in a more sensible fashion, if you like. But it's also given me an opportunity and the group an opportunity to get on the training field. So, in good shape and confident mood.
Great. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions on Zoom. Reminder to use the hand raise function if you have one. And I think, Ben, you likely do, so we'll go ahead and kick it off with you.
Yeah, Gary, I mean, you just mentioned kind of getting back to more of a normal schedule. Obviously, being out of CCC isn't necessarily a positive, but maybe getting back to more of a routine schedule, not having midweek games. Just how important is that for the group right now, as you're still trying to kind of find form in MLS and kind of start piling up some wins?
Yeah, I, honestly, after the weekend, being the 8th game, as we'd spoken about, in 24 days, it was important that the guys had a couple of days, which they had, Sunday and Monday, and we've used the rest of the week as an opportunity to get back out on the training field in a more normal fashion. And, it's not always about working tactically with 11v11s. We break a lot of stuff down here in more of an opportunity for them to start building those relationships and reinforcing those relationships in certain cases. So it's been I don't want to say a relaxed week. I think there's been some really good work gone on, but I think in terms of actually getting about the work, it's a more sensible routine rather than jumping from one game to the next.
And Ben, if you have a follow-up, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just looking at early form in MLS, obviously still unbeaten, but just one win. What are maybe some of the things that you saw against Charlotte in that win that stood out to you as things that you had done better than in some of the draws, and how do you think you can build on that going forward?
The Charlotte game was that final game in the 8-game run that we'd looked at. There was, of course, a little bit of rotation out of the week before. So some of the decisions were based on bringing some fresh legs into the group, making sure that I wasn't putting too much pressure on certain areas. But in general terms, I thought the performance was a very high caliber one. There was a bundle of energy through that midfield. I thought 2 centre midfield players did a great job of really covering an awful lot of areas. Pressure on the ball, very decent in possession. There was a real intensity about those 2 midfield players. And I think in turn they helped the 2 centre-backs as well. Broke up a lot of play. It meant that the 2 centre-backs could be more focused on areas of their game that maybe in the past they'd just fallen short on. And I thought the 2 centre-backs did a wonderful job. Up front, Sam had a really bright, positive and effective game. And long term, the hope is that we can get Tyler, Hanny, Sam on the same page and working and connecting in some of those ways that are going to be creative and bright and purposeful up front. But I do think one individual that we don't normally talk about in a creative sense was Alex Muyl. Scores a goal. In all sense and purpose, we should really be saying he might have got on the sheet, 2 or 3 times. Terrific header before he scores, and a wonderful opportunity that just fringes the post later on in the game. So I'm seeing some creative output from areas that maybe we might not necessarily have been talking about.
We'll go to Jacob Shames at the Tennessean.
Yeah, Gary, so far this season you've had 15 goals in 8 games, scored by 10 different players. I guess, how much is that something you hope to see? I guess, how much of that did you kind of expect or not expect over the first 8 games, especially, as you try to find players who can, put the ball in the net other than Hani or Sam?
Well, there's good and bad in that. I think the good is that we're seeing, as I've just said to Ben, areas of our team and our group that are stepping forward, stepping up, and adding to the tally at different times, and maybe sometimes unexpectedly. I think we can add into that group the output from Shaq Moore. I think it's been terrific. The delivery from Taylor Washington for the first goal. So we're seeing things out of the group that are very, very positive. The fact that Sam has got on the sheet, I think that's 2 or 3 games on the spin, and that he's actually starting to get into a run of minutes. That's only positive for the group. But on the negative side, we'd of course like to see Hanny involved in more of that. We're always talking about finding ways of scoring when he's not. Well, actually, I'd like him to be scoring a little bit more. And when he is, and he's creative, I think what we know is that we're certainly in a much more progressive position in terms of winning games. So, yes, there's some bright points. I'd love to see Hanny and Tyler from a purely, match-winning scenario. If those 2 guys are scoring and creating, and we can continue doing what we're doing, then we're not going to be far away from bagging points regularly.
Jacob, go ahead if you have another.
I do not. Thank you.
All right. Ben, you good or anything else?
I guess just to follow up, you kind of talked about Sam a little bit. I'm curious. We've seen him kind of struggle with injury and maybe not get like a super consistent run out. But when he has been on the field, he's been really, really productive. I'd just like to kind of get your take on what you've seen from him, maybe making some kind of off-ball runs and getting involved in build-up that I don't think necessarily a lot of people around the league maybe expected when they initially saw him sign.
The real shame is, Ben, to your point, he's been unable to have a consistent run in the group. Last year, Leagues Cup, looked bright, gets injured. Comes back, you're trying to pick up your form again. A minor problem that could have been a hell of a lot worse coming out of the Dominican trip. But I think that small window of time out, which I think ended up being 2.5 weeks, wasn't enough, I don't think, to have stuck a pin in the work that Sam had achieved in the off-season. He came back very fit, he came back very sharp, and I think we're seeing the consequence of that now. The one thing, as I've already mentioned, that I think the team does need, and I think Sam and the other creators around the team need, is time together. And the more time they have together, I think the more we'll see come out of that group. There are certain things that I can ask. There's certain, tactics or templates that we can work from. But ultimately, a lot of the creative situations will come from instinct and understanding of really natural play that those guys start to form over time on the training field and, of course, in match scenarios. So my hope is we're going to see those guys on the field more and more often, and that leads to more and more creative moments, and hopefully that's just a prelude to the benefits we can see for the group.
Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, I think obviously we've been in a really congested period of the season. We were thrown right into it, with a couple competitions, and I think that Saturday's game was really important for us to get off on a good start. Now focusing only on the league campaign, and we were able to do that with a win, get our first win at Geodis in the league, and so I think it was an important springboard. Obviously, you want to add points to the board as much as possible, and going to LAFC is not going to be easy, but we're going to try and ride that wave, ride the momentum.
Great. Ben, I see your hand up, so we'll go back to you.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, you just touched on kind of the crazy schedule to start the season. How important is it now to kind of get into more of a normal routine, maybe have some days off, but get it back out on the training field instead of just doing recovery video, but actually able to get some normal training back in?
Yeah, it's going to be to be able to really prepare more for each opponent and to be able to work on things tactically is a big advantage. And then the rest for the bodies, you can't really account for that. So yeah, it's gonna be great to go back to closer to 1 game a week type thing, and obviously we're gonna try and use the experiences that we've gone through to strengthen us and move us forward. I think it was difficult, but it was also a really important time for us, and hopefully we're sharper than other teams because we played more games, more meaningful games than them.
Ben, go ahead if you have another.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just looking at CCL or CCC or whatever it is historically, it feels like teams that play in it usually struggle in the league while they're in the competition. You guys managed to stay unbeaten during your CCC run, and it feels like you kind of have put yourself in a pretty good spot going forward. Just how important was it to maybe maintain some league form during your CCC run?
Yeah, for sure. It's super important, especially when that ends and the emotion of that kind of can be deflating. If you also then look at your league record and see, hey, we're kind of in a rough spot, it can be, it can compound itself. But obviously we were able to, using the depth of our squad, and I think just able to compartmentalize from honestly like 3 days apart, it really helped us. And being able to stay undefeated, that's something that we can hang our hat on and try and keep that going. And we were able to collect points. Even when we didn't win, we were collecting points. So I think that's been, a bright spot for leaving CCC was always going to be tough, but coming back to now a league campaign where we've done well is really nice.
We'll go to Jacob.
Yeah, Gary mentioned that after the Charlotte game that having a win after 3 draws kind of looks a little bit different from being unbeaten but not having a win. I guess is that something you feel too? It's to have that first win. Is there more confidence there in just really being unbeaten?
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously you're always going to want to win more than tying, and especially at home. When you realize that those are really big opportunities to get the full amount of points rather than 1 point. So yeah, it's always going to be a bit more inspiring when you get a win rather than a tie. But I think at the same time, when you do tie a game that you felt you could win, you do have to kind of look at the the whole picture and see, okay, we didn't get the full points, but we also didn't we didn't give away everything. And so yeah, being undefeated is always going to be a positive thing, but as many wins as you can add to that rather than ties is going to be better.
And Jacob, go ahead if you have another one.
Yeah. So far, this season through 8 games, you've had 10 players, I believe, score. I guess how much confidence does that give you just going forward, just to have kind of so many players who have gotten into the attack, even while recognizing you haven't maybe had a lot of consistency with regards to starting lineups or formations or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it again, it speaks to the depth of the squad, the amount of different players that we've used, and I think that as much as you could spread around that, the weight and the responsibility of scoring goals, the better it's going to be, because the more goal scoring threats you have, the more that each person is going to have a chance within the game. They can't just key on certain players, and they can't just establish certain guys are going to be the goal scoring threats and really try and stop them. So that's been a really bright spot for us, and we have a lot of guys who can do that, and it's been great to see that early.
All right, we'll go back to Ben for a last question to close us out.
Yeah, after the Charlotte game, Gary kind of mentioned that he really thinks playing kind of on the right side of midfield is maybe the position that gets the best out of you. And I know you've kind of played more centrally or even right back, but just kind of looking at where you are currently, just how are you feeling and kind of how are you enjoying this stretch that you've been on?
Yeah, no, I feel good. I feel like, with the congestion of the games and some injuries, I've been able to play a lot early in the season, and that's always, when you get those opportunities, you have to try and take them as much as you can. For me, I like the left a lot, but I don't know. He's the boss, he'll put me wherever he wants to put me in, and I'm happy just wherever I'm at. Just going to try and keep going as long as I'm called on. I'll try and do my best and see what happens.
All right, thank you, Alex. Thank you guys.
See ya.